¿Qué tal? Bienvenidos de nuevo. Arrancamos ahora sí, gracias por la paciencia para empezar. Me gustaría decir antes de nada, ya sabéis que este programa, que como decíamos arrancamos hoy, nos va a llevar las próximas 3 jornadas a abordar temáticas principales de ámbito global que por otra parte nos afectan absolutamente a todos los que estamos aquí, a todos en general, todos los días, sobre todo a los países
everyday lives, and particularly in Latin America and on the old continent. Now we have 4 different formats: fora, seminars, workshops, and business sessions that will lead us to intense debate that will be touching upon 4 major issues: human rights, international business, ecological transition, and digital disruption. And now I will pass the floor over to Mariano Jabonero, who is Secretary General of the Organization of Ibero-American States, one of Madrid Platform's sponsors, highly committed to organizing this forum. So, Mariano, you have the floor. Applause, please. Right. Good morning to all of you. Thank you very much, Madrid Platform, for inviting me to participate. Good day, Secretary General of State, other distinguished guests. I am sort of going to justify our presence here. It might seem obvious, but I'll explain it. Our organization is the longest standing, it's 71 years old, in the Ibero-American environment. We work in education, culture, and science, and its headquarters, since it was founded in 1949, has been in Madrid, and this isn't an accident. It is justified by the fact that this city is the capital of Ibero-America. It has truly become the most Ibero-American capital because here in this city, 1 out of every 4 inhabitants has either been born here, was born here, or is a son or daughter of someone who has been. So it really is a true melting pot. Secondly, Madrid is an innovative city. It's set its sights on digital transformation, and it's a point of reference. And we can share as a capital of knowledge, we can share best practice, and there are several factors that bring us together. We have a common culture, but also because the 2 official languages in our organizations, Portuguese and Spanish, are spoken by 800 million people. And so I think that this gives us immense potential. And we are living through dramatic times, but there are also strategic times. What has happened in our region, and we've seen this, we've witnessed this here in Madrid, has brought out that there are structural shortcomings that are very significant. In our region, 41 million households have no connectivity or any devices, and 101 million students were confined at home, and half of them were unable to follow along with their courses because they had no devices. In Ibero-America, again, this region, we have harsh differences, and there's a very strong digital gap, digital divide, I should say, and social divide as well. It's sad, but it's our reality. The OIE is present in all different countries, and there are roughly 400 cooperation projects underway, and nearly all of them have to do in one way or another with digital. We've cooperated in the past, but we've become more advanced in knowledge transfer and particularly hinging around the sphere of digitalization, which has become our core area of focus. This is very significant. We're setting our sights on the future in a twofold way, in science and education and culture. And when we talk about culture, well, culture accounts for about 4% of GDP in our countries, and 83% of these cultural events have been interrupted by the pandemic. So in this situation, we are setting our sights on cooperation necessarily in the sphere of digitalization. And as the OECD says, we will overcome this crisis sooner and better if we set our sights on innovation, transformation, and digitalization. This is the quickest and most efficient road. And I think that experiences like this, make a contribution to this. We are able to come together to debate, and we have our headquarters again here in Madrid. This was decided politically 71 years ago, and the headquarters continues to be here. And Madrid is truly, for social, cultural, economic, and demographic reasons, Madrid truly is the Ibero-American capital. And I'm very happy to share with you this public good that we can all share. That's our message. This message is a sort of mantra. We need to make cooperation something real so that we can fix or at least mitigate people's problems. Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much, Mariano, for your words. And now I will invite Ms. Carme Artigas, who is the Secretary of State for Digitalization and Artificial Intelligence in the government of Spain. Big round of applause for her. Good morning. I would like to greet the Secretary General of the OIE, the representatives from the City Council authorities, and people who are here, and particularly people who are online. Good morning. It's a pleasure for me to open this forum within the project Madrid Platform 2021, which I believe is truly opportune and enriching at this time because it's open to reflection on an issue that is of utmost importance around the world, and that is digital transformation and its economic impact. And I think that it's fundamental for the countries involved here in Madrid Platform to move forward together and to share projects to innovate in both Spain and Latin America. We find ourselves at a decisive moment for both Spain and Latin America. 2021 is a key year which will be a milestone in the economic recovery. And modernization in Spain and Latin America is going to be done digitally. This is an actual fact. It's happening. It's unprecedented for societies around the world. It's a challenge that will demand the best and the most of all of us because it's a unique opportunity to bring about structural reforms and help us in our productive fabric. We need to seize all of the talent that we have in order to make progress and to have a more sustainable, inclusive, and more digital global economy. This crisis has taught all of us on both sides of the Atlantic that there are things that are here to stay. Over the last year, we've seen how we've changed in terms of how we work, how we consume, and our social relations. We may or may not be able to continue our work, our professions, whether our children can still go to school, depend on our connectivity, our devices, our computers. And we've seen in Spain that there isn't a single tavern or bar that doesn't have a QR code on the table so that people can read it with their cell phone. So this shows just how much of an impact all of this has had and how this offers us a road to recovery. This is the keystone for our recovery in Spain. Our government has decisively set its sights on this. Nearly a third of all investment from European recovery and resilience will be put to this. This is a cross-cutting policy for all of Spain. We are investing 30%, the highest of all EU countries, and we're going to set our sights on reindustrializing for the 21st century. Two pillars, both a digital and an ecologic transitions. We need to pull these two levers that generate synergies between them. Our country is setting its sights on a green digital economy. Spain's current situation invites us to this. 19% of our GDP is already digital. It generates nearly 2 million jobs, and we expect there'll be a boom in 2021. We estimate that overall EU GDP will be 41% rather digital-based. And then there will also be an ecological transition that we must participate in. So we have a plan in Spain, we have a recuperation, transformation, and resilience plan, and we also have the Spain Agenda 2025 agenda for digitalization. In order to be able to tackle this, it needs to be a determining factor for our future. It's ambitious in order to modernize our productive fabric, our society, and our public sector. We have a national artificial intelligence plan, the modernization plan for public administrations and digital competition. I believe this is crucial, personally, and another very significant plan, which is the digitalization plan for SMEs. This last plan is something I'd like to dwell on because of the leading role that these companies and entrepreneurship will have in this transformation. It's key to build a productive model, and we want, by doing so, to step up the role of these companies that have a major role. Nearly 90% of our companies are SMEs, and their relative weight in Spain is greater than it is in the EU overall, 5 percentage points above the EU average. This plan had a budget of 4.5 billion euros, roughly, to transform 1.5 million companies. If you take a look at it, the SMEs are the ones that will need to make the most effort, but can also reap the most benefits from this, becoming international, growth, competitiveness, new business models. And this is all based on a fundamental premise, and that is that we're going to understand this process as a means but not an end in itself. And we are convinced that this is a project for the future that leads us to great synergies both in large companies and SMEs in the next 2 years. We're going to be sharing this reality. We need digital entrepreneurship, and we need to be digitally disruptive. And there, a few days ago, we closed what we call the manifestation of interest for our digital toolkit, which is a basic kit for SMEs. And we also implemented a network of the Acelera Pyme SME Step Up the Pace offices. We're moving towards a more sustainable and more resilient economy, but basically, fundamentally able to put technology to the service of our citizens, because the key to success for this transformation is that people and their talent need to drive digital transformation. That is the philosophy that we work with every day. We need technology that's humanist, that doesn't leave anyone behind, that acts to close gaps. And we need cohesion, equality amongst our region, and we need to block out social exclusion. That's our commitment. We have to take advantage of social transformation to close gaps. We need to be able to generate a safe digital environment that provides safeguards for all of our rights. We need to convey trust that will enable citizens to thrive and develop. And one of the projects that we've worked on most eagerly is the Charter of Digital Rights of Citizenship. Spain is leading debate on this internationally, the rights that we want as citizens. We want to make Spain an example worldwide, a player to look at. I will encourage all of our Latin American partners to adhere to this Charter of Digital Rights. And then we have digital literacy that we need to drive as well. There's a huge gap in Spain, and this was brought out in Spain during the pandemic. There were 700,000 households in Spain that couldn't provide education for their children because there were no devices to do so. 46% of our population is not basically literate in computers. So we need to provide literacy. Artificial intelligence is very sophisticated, but we have a course that we adopted from Finland, elements of AI. And this will enable our citizens here to follow these basic concepts. And something else that's very important that we're doing in our national strategy is to develop artificial intelligence in the Spanish language. Things are being done entirely in English, and we believe that Spain can have a major impact in developing this, and this, together with Spanish businesses, can place the Spanish language at the forefront with English. I would like to conclude by thanking the organization again. It's a pleasure to look towards the future and look towards this transatlantic project. Spain is already working in this direction, and working with our EU partners and Latin American partners, public and private sector together alike, will make this a success. We have a huge challenge ahead of us digitally. This is a thrilling challenge, and we'll be up to it thanks to the talent of our citizens. And I'm sure that nobody will lose out on this opportunity. Thank you. Thank you very, very much, Carmen. Very, very interesting thoughts about the economy and resilience, which is one of our buzzwords for this year and has been over the last year. Of course, the ultimate goal is to improve people's quality of life. Now, I'd like to remind you that all of our sessions are being broadcast via streaming. I'd like to thank all of you who are following us remotely with simultaneous interpreting. Thank you for doing so. And we are also on social media. We have our tag. We're working on security. We have a protocol. Every 2 hours, we're spraying the room with disinfectant. We're working with Democratest, our partner, to do so. And so our health safety is 100% insured. Now, we want this forum to become a place where people can think about the challenges that companies face when they decide to set their sights on new technologies, which is and has become a must. We have taken a quantum leap in 1 year that would have been taken in 10. Now, before giving the floor to the people at the next round table, I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Gilbert Ohana from FinLT Ventures from Israel. He's going to be talking about digital transformation and give us his outlook from Israel.
Hello.
Nice to see you.
Good morning.
I have to remind you, you have 15 minutes, okay? Because we have to be very clear with the timing, please. Thank you so much.
Very good.
Gracias. Un aplauso para Gilbert.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you, of course, for this opportunity to present you some of the things that are going in Israel. I'll be happy to share with you from our experience and my experience. Do we have the presentation? Is it on? Okay, so I would like to present you a little bit about the digital transformation that is happening in Israel, share our experience and some of our insights and activities. So if we can go to the next slide. So first of all, a little about FinTLV. FinTLV is a venture capital fund that is mainly focused on insurtech, insurance technology. We are today one of the leading insurtech venture capital funds worldwide. We invest in global technologies. We invested also in Europe and the US, and of course in Israeli technologies. And together with the venture capital, we also have an open innovation platform that we work with global insurance companies to digitize their businesses, use more data, more technologies that can provide value to customers. We are continuously inspecting for new startups and new technologies in Israel and worldwide. We are currently watching more than 4,000 startups on different domains: cybersecurity, data analytics, automation, IoT devices, and anything that can provide value in the journey of insurance companies that want to innovate and make their businesses more modern and provide higher value to customers. So if we can go to the next slide. So a little bit about Israel first. Israel, as you know, is a very small country. We have today 9 million citizens altogether. But I think that in terms of the economics, it's a very advanced country. One of the leading, I think, economics in the OECD, of course, respecting to the size of the country. We have about 400 billion GDP, and the GDP per capita is $43,000, which is continuously growing about 3 to 4% each year. The unemployment rate is very low in Israel, about 4%, and the inflation is very low, just a little bit below 2%. This is, of course, data of 2019, before the coronavirus pandemic 2020, and like any other country, we have suffered, of course, in terms of the economics. But I think we are just now starting to catch up again. All the businesses in Israel are open, and the economic is going forward just as usual. And I hope that will also be the state in Europe very soon. And I hope that in terms of the economic and the businesses, we will see Israel back on track like it was in 2019. One thing that is important is the on the bottom right, the investment in research and development in Israel is about 4.5% of the GDP, which is one of the highest worldwide. I think it's number 2 or number 3. So in Israel, a lot of investments are done on technology, manufacturing, and this is, of course, driving the economic forward. So if we can go to the next slide. A little bit about digital transformation.
Bien,
From my
transformación digital.
experience, one major thing that I see working with a
Algo
lot
que he
of financial
aprendido en mi
companies, it
experiencia
could be
trabajando con
insurance, it
muchas
could
empresas
be
financieras
banks,
que pueden
it
ser
could be
aseguradoras, bancos
manufacturing companies,
o
that
empresas de
all
producción,
want to
es
go
que
through
todas quieren pasar por un proceso
digital
de
transformation,
transformación
especially these
digital.
days. As you know,
Especialmente ahora.
The digital transformation got a big boost in
Como
2020,
saben, la
and many
transformación
companies
digital
increased
tuvo un
their
gran impulso en
efforts to create, to modernize the technology, be more online service companies. But most of them are focusing a lot on the customer facing side, new websites and application, providing the ability to get a service online through the website. But I think many companies do not invest enough at the back end processes, the back office processes. And if those processes are still remaining like before, then the digital transformation is. So you need to invest in the back office process to automate them, make them more efficient, data oriented, to create an end-to-end new user experience which will be advanced. So if you want, for example, I will give you a short example. Many insurance companies provide the ability to get service, maybe file claims on their website. But at the back office, many processes are still done manually. So in terms of the customer experience, it is still low because it cannot get the service in minutes, in hours, and many processes still take a long time. In order to create an end-to-end digital experience, which would be very advanced to the customer, you need to invest in all of the value chain, from the back office to the digital channels and through the customer experience itself. And this is something I think that many companies still do not invest enough in that. We can go to the next slide. So when we are speaking about digital transformation, there are so many capabilities and technologies that the company can use. But I think that eventually it comes down to 5 major elements that you need to invest on, to create strategies for, and progress in your new capabilities in those areas. And only if you have enough of these capabilities in each one of the domains, you create a full customer experience, which is digital, highly digital, and create the value that the customer will want. So the first one is customer experience. You need to design the customer journey, how we will get the service, in which specific times you will get a service. If you are a digital, let's say, a medical company, and you send a message to the customer while he's driving, so you lose the opportunity to engage with the customer. So all interactions with the customer needs to be in the right time, in the right context. If you want to provide him an offer, what will be the best time to provide the customer a new offer for a new service? It may be, the customer might be driving, he might be at home, he might be at work, and you need to think about the right context and the right time to provide and engage with the customer. And this goes through all the services and all the lifetime engagements with the customer. The second thing is the process automation. You need to invest heavily in automating the processes to be more data oriented and to transform all the activities that are done manually and can be transformed and automated with technology, and that will provide a great value to the customer, and that will of course also lower the cost of companies, that it will allow them to lower the cost on human labor. So the second one, the process automation. The third one is the use of data, AI, and analytics. Most or modern companies that are truly transforming the way they are doing business and providing value to customers need to invest a lot in analyzing the data they have and do almost anything based on data and insights based on that data. For example, if you are using the data that you have and AI capabilities, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and analytics, you can provide customized service, different one to each customer, based on its behavior, based on its preferences. So not all customers are equal. Some would like this service, some would like another service, and you need to use the data to better understand the customer, its preferences, its behavior. Almost anything that a company wants to do must start with the data they have and analyzing it. The fourth one is the cloud transition. Today, the cloud is a major platform for innovation. Many new companies, startups can provide modern technology, sophisticated technology that many incumbents companies like insurance companies and banks and others cannot develop by themselves. And if a company wants to use those technologies, it must work with startups in an open innovation practices to be able to use those technologies. Most of them are born and grow on the cloud. So the company needs to have a clear strategy on how to use cloud services, how to work with startups that are building their services on the cloud. This also has great value in terms of asset management and lowering the cost of technology when you are working in cloud with new business models with these startups. And the fifth one, of course, is the cybersecurity. Nothing can work and be efficient and secure if you don't invest in cyber security and securing your assets, your data, and your business. Customers, if they will think that a company is not secure enough and the data they provide the company is not secure enough, might leave the company. And we see that many times when different companies are going through cyber attacks. So you need to have cybersecurity strategy that addresses the cloud issues, the data issues, the privacy issues, and others. So if a company wants to have a true digital transformation process, they need to have a clear strategy on all these aspects, a long-term one, not just what the company is going to do next month or next quarter, but to have an actual long-term strategy on each one of these aspects. We can go to the next slide. So in Israel, there are more than 8,000 startups, and it is considered to be one of the leading innovative startup ecosystem worldwide. Many global companies are engaging with Israel to get access to these technologies. For example, there are in Israel more than 350 multinational companies that established a presence in Israel. It could be an R&D center, it could be a branch that works with the local ecosystem, engage with startups, experiment on new technologies, and others. In Israel, there are, yes?
I'm so sorry, you have almost 2 minutes for finish.
2 minutes. Okay, great.
Thank you.
So of course, most of these technologies are generated, are deep core technologies on big data, AI and IoT, artificial intelligence. These many companies are considered to be leading worldwide. We can go to the next slide. So as I mentioned, many companies, global companies, are engaging with the local ecosystem in Israel in different kind of aspects, getting access to these technologies. And we can go to the next slide. I'll give it brief. So Israel is very sophisticated in many fields of innovation, in agri-tech, industry 4.0, and fintech. And maybe one of the most growing field is the digital health that in 2020 got a boost. And many new companies in Israel provide new technologies, remote health technologies that provide very high value to customers. I will just leave you with two short stories in the next slide. During the COVID-19, when most of the world were looking for respiratory machines, new engineers in Israel formed and developed maybe made respiratory machines that provided hundreds of these devices to hospitals in a very short time. And on the other hand, Israel fight against the coronavirus was mainly on using data, a lot of data, to analyze where the corona is spreading, which cities are most subjected to corona. And I think this shows the importance of using data when you want to create strategies, new businesses, and new services. So I think, I hope this was insightful, and I invite you, of course, to engage with Israel on your businesses, and wish you best of luck in your continuing conference. And thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thanks a lot, Gilbert Ohana, CEO of FinLTV Ventures.
We will continue with this program. It is now a pleasure to introduce the panelists of International Digitalization in New Business Models. I would like to invite you and take your seats clockwise, as I mentioned. I was saying that we have Rosalío, Director of the Big Data Institute, UC3 Santander, Rosa Ramos, CEO of the Net for Things. Laura Yuma is the moderator. She is the founder of Semperti, Spain. The floor is yours. Thank you. And we're missing one more person who's joining remotely. Is that right? Oh, yes, here we have him.
Oh yes, Patricio Guitard. He is the managing partner of Conecta Venture. Sorry, I forgot you earlier. Good morning. Good morning to everyone, and thank you for participating. I would like to begin by introducing the members of this panel, and then we'll start the debate right away. Patricio is the managing partner of Conecta Venture. Conecta is a company specializing on promoting innovation in organizations. They have a community of international experts in digital transformation and business. They connect innovative ecosystems, startups, and dynamic companies to generate new business opportunities, creating a positive impact in the community. In addition, Patricio is managing and a founding partner of Guitard and Associates. Now we have Rosa. Just give me a second because I have a problem with my face mask. Yes, it can be tricky with the microphone. Rosa is a professor of statistics in the Carlos III University in Madrid, and for 3 years she's been the director of the UC3M Santander Big Data Institute. They collaborate with a large number of companies doing boutique research and development work, for example, with Banco Santander, Net Spain, El Corte Inglés, TapTap, TCC, amongst others. We also have Isla Ramos. Isla Ramos has a long background in business transformation, particularly in the technological sector, because she was the general director of Lenovo, and she was in charge of Lenovo's transformation at an international level for 22 countries. For 22 years, she was also launching new projects and working in the growth strategy of that company. She is currently an advisor for other IoT, the Internet for Things companies. She is as well a professor of several business schools, and she is a member of the directorate of IOF, International Women Forum, and she's passionate about social issues. Let's begin with this panel on digital transformation and new business models. So, digital transformation, this is a buzzword. We've been talking about digital transformation for several years, but now it is not an option. It is a must. And we must move forward with digital transformation because we must change the way we provide value for our stakeholders. And the pandemic accelerated the transformation. We all saw it. It was the case in many companies. I really like the photograph of the iceberg that the previous speaker showed. It is true that we had seen a digital transformation, but we needed to work on the basis. So now we need to keep working on the strategy. We need to focus on the processes which change in the blink of an eye. But we still need to solidify the engineering of the processes to really settle into the new business model. Then we have people. People also have had to adapt from one day to another. All of a sudden, they started working from home. Everything was done remotely through their computers. But new feelings started to emerge. Some of them were very negative, like the feeling of overload of information, of emotional overload, isolation. So now we must lead having people at the center, where the purposes are clearly expressed, and where we work on the cultural change that these new business models require. Talent will become a key aspect as well. One of our previous speakers mentioned the need to work on digital skills. And then technology. Technology has had an exponential growth in recent years. And, well, the companies did not adopt this technology in an exponential way. It was more in a linear way. There is a technical debt, if I may. We still have the iceberg model, and it needs to be remedied because otherwise systems will be fragile. And last but not least, cybersecurity. This is very important to protect our company's assets, our clients' assets, because the other side of the story of this digitalization precisely has to do with cybersecurity in this volatile and changing world. If I may, I would like to begin with the first questions. The first one goes to Patricio. What do you consider to be the most urgent and critical aspects that need to be considered by companies when they design their strategy for digital transformation?
Bueno, buenos días a todos. Muchas gracias, Laura, por
Good
la
morning
invitación
to everyone,
al
and thank you,
panel.
Laura, for
Y
inviting
gracias
me to
también
this panel.
a todos los organizadores de Madrid
I
Platform
want to thank the
por permitirme
organizers of Madrid
participar
Platform for giving me
de
the
esta
opportunity
conversación
to
con ustedes.
participate in this conversation with you.
Cualquier problema que tengan con el audio, por ahí me avisan si
If
se
I have
entrecorta.
any problems with the audio, please do
Me
let me know if it
gustaría
cuts out or
compartir con
anything.
ustedes una visión
I
un
would like
poco
to share
así introductoria a los temas de
a vision
transformación,
as an introduction.
transformación digital,
Digital
como
transformation.
para luego poder ir a más detalles, ¿no?
So first an overview, and then
Nosotros creemos
I
que
will
desde el
get
punto de
down
vista de la
to
transformación
details.
digital
We
y de cara
believe
a
that
las estrategias de transformación digital,
strategies of
hoy
digital
las compañías
transformation
nunca fue tan importante como
were
antes
never
revisar
as important
el
as today. So
propósito
companies need to
transformador,
review
¿no?, que
the
tienen en
reason
la
or the
sociedad.
purpose
Decimos que, bueno, que casi
transformation
todas
that
las
they have in
empresas
society.
saben qué hacen.
We say that
Algunas,
most companies know
casi
what they are
muchas saben
doing.
cómo lo hacen, pero muy pocas saben por qué hacen lo
Some
que
know
hacen,
how
¿no?
they
O
do
sea,
it,
muy
but
pocas
very few
empresas
know
pueden explicar
why
de
they
manera
do what they
convincente
do.
por qué
There
hacen
are
lo que
very few
hacen y
companies
por
that
qué
can
eso es muy
explain in a
importante, ¿no?
convincing way why they
No
do
solo
what
la
they do.
pandemia nos
And that is very
demuestra
important.
que tenemos que replantearnos el
The
rol,
pandemic
digamos,
really
del
showed
ser
us that we need
empresa
to
dentro de la sociedad,
rethink
sino que
on
también
what a
la crisis
business is and
climática
has to do for
y las
society. Not only
desigualdades
that, but there
sociales
was
que estamos
also
viviendo en el
there is
mundo
also
nos
our
hace
climate
replantear el rol de la empresa
crisis and the
dentro de la
social
sociedad.
crisis, and it's making us rethink the
Necesitamos
role
una
of
integración mucho
businesses in society.
más cercana
We
entre lo
need to
público y
have a
privado,
closer integration between public and private
y eso nos
sectors,
replantea
and
una agenda
this
estratégica
is
dentro de
also
las empresas que se
making us
oriente
rethink a
mucho más al
strategic
interés
agenda
de
that
políticas
is
públicas para
much
poder lograr
more
esa recuperación y
geared
esa
towards the
resiliencia
interest of
que
public policy
planteaban al
to
comienzo
achieve
digamos,
recovery
del
and
evento.
resilience.
O sea que por un lado necesitamos replantearnos
So,
el
on one
propósito,
hand,
¿sí?
we need
Para
to
qué estamos
rethink our
como
purpose.
organización.
What is our purpose as
Luego,
an
de cara a las
organization?
estrategias, digamos, de
And then,
transformación
in
digital, es
terms
muy
of
importante
digital transformation strategies,
tener en cuenta
it's
que la
very
planificación
important to
estratégica como la
consider
conocemos
that strategic planning, as we know it,
está cambiando.
is changing.
Pasamos a tener procesos exploratorios y
We are having
experimentales
experimental and
para hacer
exploration
mucho más
processes
prueba y error y
to
poder
do
tratar de
more
gestionar
trial and
muchísimo
error
más la
and to try
incertidumbre.
and
Nadie
manage
sabe lo que va a
uncertainty
pasar,
better.
digamos, no
Nobody
pudimos
knows what's going to happen.
anticiparnos muy bien a una pandemia, con lo cual
We really
más
weren't
que poder
capable of anticipating the
definir, digamos,
pandemic.
objetivos de
So
largo plazo,
more than
tenemos que
defining
tener
long-term
muy bien
goals,
claro
now we need
capacidades
to be
de
clear about
experimentación, prototipación, de
having
prueba y error y
capacity
ajustar mucho más
to
rápido
do prototypes, to do trial and
camino
error,
a
and to
medida que uno
quickly
va transitando, ¿no?
adjust
Luego también es muy importante entender
to the circumstances as
no
they
solamente los
arise.
cambios en el
Now,
perfil
it
del
is also very important
consumidor,
to
¿no?
understand the changes in our
toda
customers'
estrategia de transformación
profiles.
digital o de
Every
transformación
digital
general
transformation
es
or any
importante,
general
¿no?
transformation
Que acá
strategy
no
considers
solamente
this to be
lo
very
tenemos que
important.
poner por
But
delante
now,
de la
not
tecnología
only
y lo que
technology
realmente
has to
necesitan
be at the
clientes y
forefront
consumidores, sino que además tenemos
to
que poder
supply the needs of our
anticipar
customers
cuál es
and clients, but we
ese
also need
cambio
to
del
be able to
consumidor que
anticipate the
va a estar
changes
transitando o necesitando. Hoy pasamos de vender
of the
propuestas de valor
customer.
o
So
productos y servicios a
maybe today we're
acompañar a
selling
nuestros
products and
clientes, a
services
consumidores
to
y
consumers and
entender qué es lo
clients,
que van a sentir y
and instead
necesitar
we're
a
trying
futuro.
to
Las empresas que
understand
puedan
what they will
anticipar
need in
esos
the
cambios
future.
van a
The
tener una
companies that
ventaja
are able to
muy
anticipate those
importante.
changes will have an
Obviamente
important
muchos de esos
advantage
cambios
over
vienen
others.
acompañados con la transformación digital, con una experiencia
Obviously, these
digital,
changes
así,
come
y
along
con
with a digital
ciertas
experience from beginning
automatismos y
to end
ciertas
and with certain
incorporaciones de
automatizations and
tecnologías en la propuesta de valor y
integration
procesos
of
que hacen
technology
o que tienen que
in
hacer la
the
experiencia
value
de los clientes o la
proposal.
vida de nosotros mucho más fácil, ¿no?
They should make our
Vemos la
life
tecnología
easier.
como un medio para y no un fin en sí
Technology
mismo, ¿no?
is considered a means and
También
not the
creemos que
end
es
in
muy
itself.
importante el
We
enfoque
also
estratégico de
believe that
cooperación
the strategic
más que
approach
de
of
competencia
cooperation instead of
los,
competition is very
digamos, lo que
important.
vivimos en este mundo tan complejo
We live in a complex world, and the problems we face do not have simple solutions. These are very complex questions that have no simple answers. So the public and private integration, the cooperation of different stakeholders in an ecosystem become fundamental. This is why open collaboration systems that several countries in Latin America and Spain are working on become crucial. We also need to ask ourselves how digital transformation can promote that cooperation. To finish, I would like to talk about leadership. How are we preparing ourselves to lead? We have a much more humble, open, and transparent approach. So first, as leaders, we need to find our North Star so that we can lead our organization. Then, thinking in terms of sustainability and digital transformation, we need to rethink of a better normal and not a new normal. And that's all I wanted to share with you. Thank you, Patricio. Yeah, that's really it. Digital transformation and technology is just a way, but really digital transformation talks about a process that needs agile processes, and it requires a culture of collaboration. And technology really is the enabler and makes everything fluid. It's what makes giving a response to these demands possible. Isla, what is the effect that new technologies are having on new business models, and how do they impact the market? Well, first I would like to say it is an honor to be in this panel with you. I think that Carmen Artiga already mentioned it. I think Gilbert mentioned it, and I think Patricia and you mentioned it as well. Technology, at the end of the day, is only a means. The way I see it is as a chemical formula. I think that technologies are the ingredient that when it is in contact with the air, with the environment, produces certain reactions. And those reactions are trends, what we call market trends. I have certain ideas of what they are, and I will share them with you, but there are probably many more. The first trend is the open 24/7. This is not as new, but for some companies, it is very new. Carmen was talking about SMEs being open 24/7 has changed the world, because now our suppliers and our employees and our clients expect us to be open 24/7. This has been possible thanks to certain technologies such as automation, voice recognition, the cloud. So this technological ingredient has allowed this tendency to move forward. In order to be open 24/7, there are other elements, such as cybersecurity. That's key. The second trend I see is the action-reaction. We want everything to be instant, immediate. Remember the time when a client ringed us and we told them, sure, I'll forward you the information. This is long gone. Now, an instant reaction, an instant action is expected. Even the response within our organizations has to be instantaneous. This has been possible thanks to blockchain, cloud, AI, and even high-speed networks. All of these elements are necessary for giving such quick responses. Thirdly, information is ever present. Data is everywhere. They come from everywhere and they go everywhere. We have an excess of data. So what happened to those days in which we had people devoted to researching data? Now we have more data than we need. So now what we need to do is to transform data into information. This ubiquity of information is becoming an important trend, habilitated by data analytics, business intelligence, predictive models. The fourth trend is everything is automated. That's how I call it. Everything is automated. We want everything to happen with the minimum amount of human interaction. In this case, we have technologies such as the Internet of Things, facilitating things with its sensors and actuators. We have a connected car and many more things. The fifth trend is the everything as a service. The cloud itself is an example of the everything as a service. I don't know if you know STI. Ladies in the room, there is a service called handbags as a service. You don't even need to buy a new handbag. If you have to go to a party, you can order a handbag as a service. But for this to occur, it needs AI in its very powerful data models and platforms. Now, speaking about platforms, like Patricio mentioned, ecosystems are very important. Ecosystems of platforms. Working in an isolated way is no longer enough. Then the case of Mill Journey that Gilbert, of customer journey, Gilbert mentioned it. So it's not only the experience, now it's the journey, the massive personalization. So now we don't only need clients, now we need fans. We don't only need satisfied clients, they need to be fans. Because social media moves that information around. And then we have one last phenomenon, which is a series of principles that allow us to have a capacity of being flexible to reach an end or a goal which is not as clear or is not as important as the process to get there. I think it's fascinating how you have summarized all these trends, but now I would like to dwell on one of them. You mentioned that it was necessary precisely to move forward. And now I would like to ask a question to Rosa. In this process of digital transformation from data science, which is your expertise, which are the subjects that are still pending and the challenges, and how are universities working on those? Yes, okay. Well, first of all, I would like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to share this space with you. So, data science, which is a much sexier name to what has always been statistics, mathematics, and information systems, has really been a very fascinating challenge for universities. I am the director of the degree of Statistics and Enterprise of the University Carlos III since 1996. And back then, we had humongous problems for students to choose this degree or this focus for their major, even though we had plenty of students. So Carmen and Gilbert had mentioned a key element before, which is talent. And this issue of digital transformation has not sunk in amongst young people, particularly amongst women. They still haven't understood completely how important data is, particularly because there is a completely different approach to mathematics in elementary and secondary school, and we need to sort that out. Now, some universities has begin to address these issues. And Carlos III, which is my university, has now the degree of science data and engineering. It just started, and we're now in the third edition or in the third year. And we also have a master's. I think that at that level, there's a lot of intrusion from people who think are doing data science and machine learning and artificial intelligence. It seems that everyone knows how to do this, but I think this is not the right approach. If we want the data to be monetized properly and that data informs decision-making in all society, we really need to study it in a deeper way from a scientific point of view, really. I would like to highlight that there are new collaboration projects between companies and the university. I set one in motion, one called Big Analytics. So what we do is that we create profiles together, and this is a very interesting supply, let's say, of human resources that are already trained for this, because the company is hiring or because the model of companies hiring students that come out of the university is obsolete. So I think you are the ones who can propose study plans or curricula that are really useful for the present and the future. I think it's very, very important and very interesting from what you've said, so I'm going to keep talking on the following. It is very important to understand how universities are working on applied research that allows to create links between academia and the business world. Could you share with us one of the cases that you mentioned of research and development programs? To illustrate what you were saying earlier, yes, I think the first thing really is to forget the old vision of the university in which we're all scientists creating theorems. I think that that is an obsolete role or image. What universities are doing now is that they're doing applied research. Why? Well, amongst other things, because transfer of knowledge is one of the most valuable things. In that context, as how the institute that I direct was created. It's sponsored by the Banco Santander. And I say that we do research or boutique research work because we need a group of PhDs with background on the different scopes necessary for a big data problem. So in that way, we do a very, very applied research. For example, the optimization of a batch grid that needs to be optimized, right? That is a very interesting challenge. The literature, for example, said that this problem could not be tackled, but we are tackling it. Another example, digital marketing. As you know, marketing or digital marketing has seen a boom recently, and it has changed the paradigm of how things are done. And I think there is a market niche where we are particularly appealing to you, which is the interpretation of machine learning and artificial intelligence models. Despite the fact that they are being developed predictively, still in many sectors there are certain circumstances that demands regulation and interpretation. Particularly in regulation, that was mostly thought of in banking and medicine. So we have developed a good amount of technology. And the people we're working with are happy because we keep working with them. This is an excellent example. And the transfer that you do with organizations is very important because it brings the university closer to the problems that these stakeholders have. Yeah, exactly. I also think there is another problem. Data analytics is only one part of the process, but there are many companies that are focused on gathering more and more data without really knowing what to do with all that data later. We know that they use algorithms, luckily because everything is open, but then they don't know how to extract value from them. If you don't know how to transform your data into value, then it's worthless. Can I make a comment? I think it's fascinating what Rosa is saying. I believe that in terms of market challenges and the challenges that companies face is that now the key or the main difficulty is knowing how to ask the right questions. Now, the difficulty is not providing the answers, but in knowing what you're asking from your data. This is where I think we should be focusing. We certainly need analytics and whatnot, but if we don't understand the problem, if we don't know what problem we're trying to understand, then the rest is useless. Yeah, this is really the first step. When you work with big data, you need to know, what do I need to know? And based on what I need to know, what data do I need? And then you need to ask the right question. Thank you for this comment, Isla. Now, we're still talking about specific examples. So, Patricio, you mentioned you were working with a collaborative and open innovation model. Could you share an example of an experience with us? You're on mute, Patricio. Now we can hear you. Very well. It is a bit early here in Buenos Aires. So what I was hearing you talk about data, it's fascinating. We could talk about it for hours. Well, speaking about Conecta and about certain experiences that we have in integration and public-private cooperation, there was a process we did some time ago, and it was fascinating. We worked with Brazil to develop a strategy for the entire country. They called it the Strategic Agenda of Brazil. This was an initiative from the Industrial Union in Brazil called CNI, but then it was integrated into the government under President Lula's administration. The academic world participated, as well as entrepreneurs and athletes. There were different forms of co-creation and innovation, and a series of ways to generate value were defined. They were geared from Brazil to the future in a 5- and 7-year term. It is now used in the growth agenda. And several decisions for deep change were made there in Brazil. The first one that was the technification of several industries, like the agro-industry, because of the specific weight that this country has. Then there was technological transfer, and this had to be done so that the technological capacity could reach the ends, which are really the SMEs that are giving a service maybe in a remote region or town or village or city, or maybe they have to reach slightly bigger companies as well. So that technology had to be transferred so it can reach the last mile, as they called it. And obviously the technology had to be appropriate to the sector, and it had to include capacity building. This was a strategy for Brazil and for their companies to be able to transform and expand, etc. But something very interesting was to work on how to identify the interests of each parties of the ecosystem, because many times they have very different interests, and bring them together into a common development agenda for the country so that they could be more competitive at a regional level. Many companies said they were productive, but not competitive. So a conversation on public policy had to take place. How a private company can suggest public policy, and then a government maybe can suggest that growth comes from private investment. So there was a double flow of information. It was very complex, it was very sensitive to work this way, but really the solutions that they give rise to have a high impact. So that's a very, very fascinating work, and it's documented. It has to do with open innovation, and not only entrepreneurs participated, but like I said, many other key actors of the ecosystem participated. Thank you, Patricio. I think Carmen mentioned it too.
It's very important to join forces in public-private partnerships. Also, businesses amongst and between each other need to join forces and become closer. All right, and I'll then finish with you. This is the last question. You very clearly mentioned the trends. Now, what about COVID-19? What has this changed? And what do you think we need to tackle vis-a-vis the recovery? Yes, it clearly has changed things. I would say basically two different spheres have changed. One very clearly, and that is acceleration of this transformation, the digital transformation and the transformation of different business models. And I think that there's been a stepping up of the pace because of the need that companies and governments have had. But I also think, I don't know whether you agree with me, but I think resilience or resistance has become greater. And we have diminished resistance to change. This has jolted us ahead. Almost overnight, you need to start reading QR codes at restaurants. And then we realize, well, it wasn't all that much of a big deal. Having said this, and Karma also mentioned this, the digital divide is still huge. In many countries, it's a tremendous challenge. And here I have my little social dimension, but there are many children who were left entirely behind because they didn't have access to technology. Their families, households were not equipped and familiarized. And the second thing I think that has changed, and you're going to love this, I think, is that all of a sudden we've put people at the center. I don't think perhaps we did. We forgot about people a bit. And in transforming our business models, people, human beings, have made a huge comeback and taken the center stage. In our adaptation, in the well-being, well-being has moved up a whole lot of places on the rank of what's important. Management, and people are starting to think about, people were starting to think about working from home, and now it's just been something that we've been saddled with. So I think that we're going to move into hybrid models that we'll need to lend thought to. And lastly, Rosa also mentioned this, talent is being managed differently. I think that we perceive talent differently, and big news for all of us, I think that talent no longer has frontiers or boundaries, borders that it used to. People have sought talent wherever. Well, what difference does it make if we're all working from home, right? So I think that you asked me what I've seen, and looking towards the future, this is how I see it. Well, this is very, very important, the way you see this. We're accustomed to see people in offices, and the stage has been set differently now. Now, it's truly been a pleasure to share this panel with you, but I'd like to ask each one of you for 3 words to name the main 3 challenges towards digital transformation given the pandemic. Would you like to continue by answering that one? Well, I think it's continuing with this momentum, continuing the transformation. Secondly, focus on people, and looking at opportunity. Those are the 3 things. Rosa, what about your 3 words? I think the first would be that business need digital transformation more than just digital platforms. I think that in Spain we're lagging behind on that. Secondly, convergence towards hybrid business models. In order to develop, we need that for humanism. And thirdly, the coexistence of 4, 3, or even 5 generations that are very different. No one should feel left out. Young people shouldn't older people shouldn't, even though they have different vantage points. Yes, well, I think that the pandemic stepped up managing diversity and inclusion, but I think we still have a lot left to do. Sometimes we talk about gender diversity, but there's also age diversity. Yes, and there are people who have experience at thought, at creating, people who have years and years of experience. Yes, absolutely. Patricio, what about your 3 final words? I would add humility from the standpoint being humble in leadership and sustainability. And then, well, I almost want to say 4 terms. Cooperation. It's hard for me to sum up. And welfare, people's well-being in the broad sense. So thank you. Okay. Well, thank you very much. We hope it's been of interest for all of you. It's been a pleasure for me to share this roundtable with all of you. And we'll see, talking about inclusion, we have 3 women together on this panel. So thank you very, very much. And Patricio also, we'll see you. Thank you very, very much. This is very, very interesting, this panel. This was magnificently moderated, and we're absolutely on schedule. It's not easy to stay on schedule at all. Now I'm going to give way to a presentation to a white paper on digitalization for SMEs. And this is from the Spanish Confederation of Young Entrepreneurs. We have Carmen Alonso Cañada, who is the manager of the Internet of Things and Big Data for Telefónica Tech, and Antonio Magraner, vice chair of the CEAJE. Big rounds of applause for them. And while they get their microphones on, I'll remind you that we have an official hashtag. Now, I insist a lot on social medias. There are a lot of people who aren't very enthusiastic about these virtual events. But social media, again, there are people who aren't very enthusiastic. But in 2020, I think technology was the great facilitator of cyber encounters, virtual or internet encounters. We realize that the future is hybrid, and without the support of social media, this would really be impossible. We all realize this. And I think it's a good idea to keep this very much in mind. So the hashtag is Madrid Platform. I'm sure that you're going to continue to follow us for the rest of the day today and tomorrow and the following. I don't know whether our guests are ready to come up to the stage. I believe that Carmen and Esteban can make their way up. Esteban Campero is in charge of SMEs and entrepreneurship, and he's from the General Secretariat, the Ibero-American General Secretariat. So please do come up in the order that I'm calling you. So first, Carmen Alonso Cañada, Management of the Internet of Things and Big Data at Telefónica Tech. Antonio Magraner, who is the vice chair of the CEAJE. And then Esteban Campero, who is in charge of SMEs and entrepreneurship at the Ibero-American General Secretariat. Now, this is very, very important. Obviously, there are very few people here in person. Only 30% of our auditorium can be full. We're highly rigorous with our time, also because we need to respect those participants who are watching us via streaming. And this is why I mentioned that the role of the moderators is crucial. So gradually, people who are following us via streaming need to be coordinated. We have 13 different countries that we're coordinating today. Here in Madrid, we, as I mentioned, are connected with all of these different countries. And here, I believe we're prepared. Okay. Don't worry, Esteban. I was about to say you have an added degree of complication. Don't worry about it. I was going to say that perhaps a hand microphone would have been better. Okay, well, I'll greet you from here. I'll keep my distance. Carmen and Esteban, thanks very much. I hope that you've been enjoying today's session. And I'm very anxious to hear the presentation of this white book for the digitalization of small and medium-sized enterprises. And this was put forward by the Spanish Confederation of Young Entrepreneurs. So I believe that we can start, and when Esteban is able to make it, he can be included. I'm delighted to greet you. My name is Esteban Campero. Well, there's a bit of a lag with the microphone. I'm very sorry about that. As I was saying, that I work at the International Secretariat of the Ibero-American Secretariat. We work on innovation, digital transformation, and entrepreneurship. And I was recently conversing with friends about something that was very interesting, a very interesting experience. And that was the development of this white paper for the digital transformation of SMEs. The Council of Young Entrepreneurs in Spain worked on this. Carmen will be telling us about that. She'll talk about this very topical subject. We started doing this before the pandemic. And, well, the Secretary of State since the beginning of the pandemic was able to multiply this, and microenterprise particularly, as well as SMEs, needs to undergo a very complex process. There is always an absorption of technology. So if anything characterizes our productive fabric, both in Latin America and in Spain, it is SMEs. Nearly 99% of our companies are SMEs or micro enterprises. And this leads us to a very significant issue of productivity, accessing innovation. We have a lot of entrepreneurs and not much innovation if we take a look at the glass half empty. So, without going on much longer, Carmen from Telefónica, thanks very much for being with us.
Which is the International Federation of Young Entrepreneurs. He's a great friend. We have been working with him in the innovation, entrepreneurial, and sustainability in Latin America for quite a while. So without further ado, I would like to start with some maybe fundamental questions. Antonio Cuerpo, what was the origin of the white paper, and why did we start creating this paper? Yes, well, good morning to everybody. Thank you to Madrid Platform for inviting me. Excuse me for the delay, but I did not calculate my time well. Like Esteban was saying from the Confederation of Young Spanish Entrepreneurs, well, first I would like to tell you who we are and then how we had the idea to have this study. So SEAGE is the Spanish Federation of Young Entrepreneurs in Spain. We have several chapters in Spain, and we have more than 23,000 associated members. You are a young entrepreneur until you are 40, and then from 41 on, you go to be part of senior organizations, so to speak. So in 2019, we did a study to see what was the level of digitalization of pymes, of SMEs, of mini SMEs, and of self-employed workers, because they have a great representation in the economic sector in Spain. So you normally think of young people with digitalization because we're all digital natives, right? But we know that more than 60% of the companies of these young people is not that they were only a little bit digitized, is that they were not digitalized at all. They didn't have like virtual payment applications or anything. So an idea, for example, a company from a young entrepreneur could be the bar in the corner. We were really surprised by this, and we wanted to see why they were not digital. And we saw that there were some answers that were constantly repeated. The first one is that they were afraid, they were afraid that digitalization was something having to do with big enterprises, multinational or multi-Latin enterprises. Then they thought they were something important for the future, but not for now. Or thirdly, they thought that becoming digital would cost them a lot of money and that they didn't have that kind of budget available to them. So this white paper tried to bust these myths of misunderstandings or of answers that repeated over and over. So this is when we went to Carmen, who was the visible face of Carmen. Okay, well, thank you very much. So Carmen, what is the main goal of this white paper of digital transformation? First of all, let me thank you for inviting me. Thank you, Esteban, and thank you for and congratulations for this initiative of Madrid Platform, because I think it's very necessary in this moment that we're living. Well, the main goal of the book, like Antonio said, was to preach a little bit, to share this need that SMEs had, because even though they knew it was important to go digital, they didn't think it was urgent, especially when they compare themselves to big digital companies and big giants that already had roadmaps and they were in an advanced stage of digitalization. But then what happened? Well, the pandemic arrived. And I think that this main goal of going digital, even before the white paper was launched, was fulfilled, because if an SME wanted to keep operating, they had to be connected. They had to have a high-quality broadband, and they had to have a virtual answering system. They needed to figure out how to operate in B2C systems through e-commerce or through a marketplace. They needed to have a digital job position so that they could keep working from home or remotely. So in the end, we didn't need to preach at the level we had foreseen initially. So the objective changed into turning this white paper into a very practical guide. In fact, it is published and you can download it from the website where it's published. The idea then was to explain what were the first steps that an SME or a mini SME had to take if they wanted to go digital. In that sense, it was crucial to pick certain testimonials. We picked 14 examples, 14 SMEs that we considered to be excellent because they were really showing the trajectory or the journey that has to be followed to go digital. Today, I would like to highlight 3 of them because it was really difficult to pick the winners, let's say. Not because there weren't excellent companies, there was a myriad of them, but because we wanted to pick the very best. And once the white paper was launched on September 15, 3 of them have received a very special award, and I wanted to mention them. We have first Pat Benefit, which received the PYME Fase 1 Horizonte 2020 of the European Union Research and Development. Then We Are Kneaders. They received the prize of Girona 2020, and Apisamonas, they received the prize of the fashion industry in 2020. I agree with you, Carmen. It was a really positive thing to have testimonials because then they are positive roles that help others see themselves there, and they help go digital. We are not presenting the next Facebook. We are talking about entrepreneurs in flesh and blood that underwent their process of digitalization. Antonio, I remember those days when we were running around with the presentation and then COVID struck, and we had to have certain precautions even for the launching. So how did the pandemic influence in the publishing of this white paper? Well, like Carmen was saying, it influenced or it had an impact on everything. Once we had this instant in December of 2019, this snapshot, thanks to the survey we had, we knew the level of digitalization that was out there. Then we started working in January with a working team, and you were part of it. Then we proceeded to select 14 companies, and like Carmen said, we weren't really thinking 14 technological companies. We were looking for traditional businesses instead to demonstrate that digitalization is not only for startups or for digital native startups. Digitalization is for all companies. So we started looking at young entrepreneurs and their state of digitalization. But then what happened? The pandemic. And what happened? The white paper had to be published in May or presented in May, and it didn't happen. We had to push it back to September. In fact, 1 week before September, we didn't know if we were going to be able to present it or it had to all be done online. And in the end, we had a hybrid event with an important number of an audience, of an in-person audience. Then, of course, in March, the world stopped and closed down, and digitalization had a certain aspect. And then in May or June, digitalization looked completely different. There is a CEO of a very big company in Spain who told us last year in June that the 4 months of lockdown in Spain, were equivalent to 4 years of digital transformation. So on one hand, this was very positive because we were no longer starting at -10, but on the other, it was really difficult because then the work we had done was not as useful because the situation had drastically changed very quickly. Yes, Antonio was saying that in a few months we were able to achieve the goals that were foreseen for several years. So Karma, and the Secretary of State, and Gilbert, with his experience of ecosystems in Israel working with SMEs, have already talked about that. But now I would like you to tell us, even though you tell us where to download it, and now we're going to tell you where you can download it from, but we would like you to share certain features of the or the requirements that an SME has to achieve to go digital. Because sometimes this seems so difficult that digitalization becomes too big of a task. So what are the objectives? Yes, sure, Esteban. So this white paper has three main pillars. The first one, of course, is technology. There are different levels here. The first level, it has to do with the basics, with digital basics, which perhaps SMEs have evolved the most, obviously because of COVID. Then there is a second level of technology which we consider to be mature and accessible. Why? Because in recent years we've seen that connectivity has progressed, and the progress has been fast. We've also seen an increase in the capacity to store data and then to analyze the stored data, which has really been enabled by the cloud. We are beginning to identify a series of technologies. So the first one is a cloud, and it is an enabler for SMEs. The paper insists a lot that every technology is only a means for the end, which is digital transformation. It's not the end in itself. We also speak about cybersecurity, which is crucial because more than half of the SMEs that suffer an attack never manage to recover. Normally, cyber attacks come from employee applications, or from websites, or from browsing, or from email. So this education and having a strategy of cybersecurity in place is vitally important for SMEs because they sometimes think it's too expensive and they don't have the budget for that, and it shouldn't be the case. Then there are other technologies like the Internet of Things. It can look very ambitious, but then we explain how this should be a bottom-up strategy, that you should integrate devices little by little. Then there's RPAs, data analytics, robotics, AI, a series of technologies. Secondly, we have centered on people, and people are considered the cultural change that is needed. No matter how small your SME is, sometimes that might mean that you have to leverage in other more open ecosystems with external partners to get help. And lastly, the white paper focuses on ecosystems, meaning that we need to be open to a collaborative model. The white paper shows that many companies have achieved quick growth thanks to this business model and this way of thinking. We heard what you just said also from the case of Israel, and I now ask you as head of Telefónica, what can a big company do to help SMEs go digital? I think Telefónica has thought a step ahead with a strategic plan that we've had in place for several years. It has measures to regulate everything from design of products that are created with artificial intelligence. Then we have the Unbox, which are open collaboration spaces. And SMEs have to know how to take advantage of them, to position themselves. And we're also creating open platforms so that SMEs, no matter how small, can go digital, can adopt those technologies and embrace them. We are a technological company. We have a data-driven vision, and we think we can help all these SMEs. Antonio, my friend, what is next? We produced the white paper of digital transformation, understanding that the adoption of the fabric is as important as creating new technologically based and innovative companies or enterprises. So what do you think? What can we do, thinking not only in Spain, but in your function as a permanent secretary of this Federation of Young Entrepreneurs? I am very happy that you asked that question because we are in an international hub, a business hub between Latin America and Europe. So the next first step is the consolidation of the white paper. It shouldn't just be on a website saying, oh, this is very nice, we need to go digital. No, we actually need to go digital. Because we have a friend that was telling me that the countries in the future will become differentiated by countries that generate technology and countries that consume it. I think Spain has spectacular talent. It has a great basis, but we need to give them the tools to avoid the brain drain to other places. Next step, giving the mindset of Latin America and having all these points we have in common. Well, each country has its own way of seeing things, so we need to try to reproduce or to replicate this white paper and adapt it to each country. Thank you very much. So this is going to be our commitment to distribute it in the entire region and to share it through Madrid platform, which is a hub and a meeting point for all our SMEs and our entrepreneurs. Thank you, Carmen. Thank you to all of you. Thank you very much to the three of you, through Esteban, Carmen and Antonio. This has been fascinating.
De este libro blanco para la digitalización de las pequeñas y medianas empresas por parte de CEAGE. En este momento os voy a pedir, porque tenemos.
Now I'm going to ask you, because we have to disinfect, to please just leave just for a couple of minutes, because at noon sharp we'll be continuing with our program and we'll work on the rest of the panel. Thanks very much.